Hi, thanks for joining us and welcome to another discussion with one of our expert partners. Before we get into the main conversation, here are a few sound bites to give you a feel for the topics we touch on. Hope you enjoy it and feel free to suggest other topics that you'd like us to discuss in future videos.
The online tools that we bump into for my stuff are really just portals. They're not like looking up transient hotel rates. You don't just pump in your stuff and somebody spits out here's our DDR. The whole mice business, for the most part, everything is still pretty much a well-guarded secret.
And I think that basic pricing when it comes to room rental is the first step. The DDR is, I think, would always be like an indicator, but that's what we have with rooms as well. I think with rooms, we can see all these prices. It's a bit of an as-of rate. So in that respect, I think the technology behind it, I don't think it would be that difficult because it's more data scraping, but it's more indeed also the involvement and the adaptation of the M&E industry within the hotel industry to be open for these sort of things.
I think there's probably a systemic bias toward transient rooms. Generally speaking, in hotel, revenue management systems originally were all developed around pricing transient rooms. And I think where that put a lot of the meeting situation is that, you show up with a meeting you want to book, and you're talking to the revenue team about it, or you're talking to, whoever you have to get it approved. And I think meetings have to justify their existence versus transient projections.
There's a couple of chains that I know that have that start the other way around, because their M&E revenue stream is like sometimes 60 or 70% of total, and rooms is sort of, okay, it's out there. And the way they look at it is completely different, obviously. And coming back to these DDRs, they really look at, the involvement of DDR. What is the best split between food, beverage, room rental? How can we shift that around tax-wise, you name it? So they go into the details, really into the whole M&E part.
But now, when we get new hotels, we just throw a list of the hotels into a chat GBT prompt and says, tell me how many rooms is this hotel, how many suites do they have, what's their meeting space capacity, and it all just flows right back to us. And that's very helpful for us doing what we're doing. So I have to extrapolate that, saying is, what I do all the time is I pretend to be a real customer. I'm going to assume that a real customer is also going to be doing that,
doing the same.
And to basically say, okay, here's my requirements. Which hotels in this market would meet my requirements, and then get a pretty good list that they could then work with. So I can see that as being a useful tool for someone who is on the buying side of this equation.
I think it's also for event organizers. Even privately, you can just put in, I want to go to Rome. What do you suggest? And you get like a full list of them. So why not do that with as an indicator? And like you said in the beginning, there's a lot of details that go into meetings. So you would have to be at a certain time, be in contact with a proper location. But in the meantime, your filter is really, really strong, and presenting something as an event organizer to the people that you have to organize it for is quite a lot easier nowadays with the information at hand through AI.
Hi guys, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it for our this video series that we're going to be calling Mice, Mice, Baby. So no legal suits. We're not going to be playing the song over this. I don't want anyone coming at me for Vanilla Ice or his recording, whatever it would be. We're just plagiarizing the name to talk about everything that is mice related in the hotel sector. You guys are front and center within this, so it seemed to make sense because there's not a lot really where people just focus on what's going on in that arena at the moment. So it seemed like a great idea to get a couple of people who are spending all that time in that environment to share some thoughts. So what we're going to do, the format, we've got another video format that we do like this, where we pick 3 questions, have three different people and three different opinions, and I'll try to contribute as much as I possibly can. So let's kick it off with the first question. So the first question we're looking at is around DDR, so delegate day rate. I think the question was posed, I think, Peter, you kind of indicated whether there's, is the increase of online meeting booking tools, would a DDR price comparison tool be an asset? I think then, Don, you were saying that it could be a great idea, but you're not quite convinced that the online component is probably viable. Let me throw that over to you, and maybe you can kind of take that and give us some insights as to where you think the DDR space is and where we are with regards to a potential of a price comparison tool.
Obviously, I'm going to say a DDR price comparison tool would be awesome because that's what I do. So I might be a little biased in that regard. Whether or not the online environments that are coming up, for submitting RFPs and so on, help with that is a completely different question. And what we do is we're always doing that kind of research, and the online tools that we bump into for my stuff are really just portals. They're not like looking up, transient hotel rates. You don't just pump in your stuff and somebody spits out here's our DDR. The whole mice business, for the most part, everything is still pretty much a well-guarded secret. And, when you submit an online inquiry now for something, obviously the DDR is a component to it. It still has to it goes through somebody's desk. Somebody looks at it, figures it out, sends the reply back out, and so there's no automated portion to it. And usually, when you think of a tool, it's got some automation to it, like transient tools and all that kind of thing. So, plus we see, DDR still only gets quoted. Depends on the market. I mean, some markets that's the standard. But worldwide, with what we do, we only actually see a DDR about, I'm going to say 40% of the time. Most pricing that comes out is still a la carte. And, when we do get quotes, when we do the online stuff, it does come back to us both ways. So I think that, like I said, I think it would be a useful tool if you could do it, but I don't think it's something that's sort of an automated version of it is, on the cards right now. I think it's still very much a manual extraction program like we do to get that information.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I mean, you initially kind of posed the question as well. So what made you? Are you aware of something that's going on? Are you? I mean, just what's your thoughts? What's your opinion on it?
Well, there's already some things happening online where you can compare and book immediately a smaller meeting. I mean, and I agree with Don that the bigger that comes through all sorts of agencies or booking platforms are customized, and you can't just fill something out quickly and get a rate. But there are some opportunities and are some platforms already now live that for like a basic meeting room without the DDR, just like a room rental, that you could easily have a look what is available. It's already there on some of the, I mean, at least in Europe, quite some hotel chains have this on their own website that you can immediate book. I think even some of the bigger chains have it, some availability of some smaller meeting rooms for 10 persons, and you can just book that one. And very straightforward, you book it, you get a link, you pay for it, and you get your confirmation. So there is already some sort of pricing out there when it comes to, basic pricing. And I think that basic pricing when it comes to room rental is the first step. The DDR is, I think, would always be like an indicator, but that's what we have with rooms as well. I think with rooms, we can see all these prices. It's a bit of an as-of rate. So in that respect, I think the technology behind it, I don't think it would be that difficult because it's more data scraping, but it's more indeed also the involvement and the adaptation of the M&E industry within the hotel industry to be open for these sort of things. Because I think you tapped upon it already in the introduction. The awareness sometimes of M&E is not as well, it is not as good as it is for rooms, and hence also technology for rooms in all sorts of aspects is way out there. Well, with M&E being more complex, being not considered as like a super important revenue stream, it is something that needs extra attention in order to develop also the technology that comes towards the future in price comparisons.
And so I guess, I mean, you guys are the specialists in this area. I'm certainly not. So I'm more posing questions than sharing an opinion. But I mean, this is done obviously in the room side of things but I mean, that's because room rates are typically publicly accessible in lots of different places. I wouldn't, how, as a comparison to rooms, how, as a percentage, how much public accessibility is there when you're looking for a price for, say, a standard meeting room, not a big large event? You know, are you able to go to I mean, you've indicated some of it is happening. I'm just wondering, is this the early start of people starting to publicly outline their meeting space as they're trying to drive additional revenue, so they're putting the prices out there? Or is it just some hotels do it, some don't? I'm kind of thinking where we're going to get the data from to do these comparisons is what I'm thinking.
Well, the data is out there when you look at it. If hotels are putting it on their own website, it can be scraped and then put into some sort of a platform or some sort of a tool. But indeed, the accessibility and then the engagement, because I mean, it's no use in having 3 hotel chains working on this one, and then in the end, it's nobody uses it. Like with the hotel rooms, the involvement, there's so many hotels out there that find it interesting, and the big bunch is non-M&E hotels. Whereas for the M&E hotels that are really interested in having this information, it's only a smaller portion of the market. Yet, looking at the efficiency, what you could be able to do when you book online or you get smaller quotes online, back of house is not as busy with all these smaller offers. It takes a lot of time because in principle, smaller offer is as big as a big offer when it comes to time usage. So the interesting thing about it would be it would not only be a gain in the front end to say we can compare our rates with 4 or 5 other hotels. You would also win on efficiency. But the biggest challenge, I think, is that you would have to really, I think getting the technology is okay, but getting the involvement and the adaptation of the hotel industry, it's even with this company that we have now with meeting rooms, you can hear a lot of hotels saying, yeah, but it's my last room, I don't want to put it out there. Whereas with hotel rooms, we just overbook constantly, right? I mean, it's like the normal thing to do. So it's really a matter of shift of mind.
I was going to say, it sounds like a mindset thing.
Yeah. I think that's a combination, and I think that always also comes with the second part that we may be discussing is really this awareness about M&E and the importance of it.
Don, any sort of thoughts on that before we move to our next question?
I think I probably have maybe a narrower perspective on it because we service clients who are by definition having us do what we do because they're really interested and concerned about all their mice business and that type of thing. So I think I'm going to have to just basically declare a bias on this just from our experience, because we kind of self-filter. So if a hotel doesn't care very much about mice business, they don't talk to me. Yeah. So I have a narrower perspective of that.
Understand that. Okay, well, maybe it does lend itself into the second question. And the second question, Peter, this was one that you put out there for us to discuss, is I guess twofold. Sort of where does M&E sit in mindset? Picking up on our last point, within hotels as a revenue contributor, and how can the importance and the image of M&E be increased and focused on as a revenue contributor? So, what made you first of all? I mean, you're in that space, but what made you think that this is something that really we should be talking about?
Well, it's most of the at this time of the year, you know, September, October, there's a lot of hotels, depending on their fiscal year, making budgets for next year. And when I talk to colleagues and other hotels, the main attention and the main focus is always, although they have a big stream of meeting and events, the main focus, it starts with room revenue. You know, it's not even like priority one is room revenue and to see what is the growth, what is expected, and so on. And whenever then that is sort of done, they look at, oh, yeah, and then we have F&B, oh, and M&E is there as well. And I think it's because the complexity of it is not as easy to explain from the M&E teams to the other teams, like, you know, sometimes the revenue sales or general managers team, because these people, and I mean, I'm an advocate for them because they have the most difficult job in the hotel, I think, because, you know, they have the clients, they have internally, and they have also to make offers and so forth. So for them to put their foot down and say, listen, you know, I really need whatever the meeting rooms to be refurbished, because with that revenue stream can be, instead of 40%, now it can go up to 50. And I can see a big difference. There's a couple of chains that I know that have like that start the other way around, because their M&E revenue stream is like sometimes 60 or 70% of total, and rooms is sort of, okay, it's out there. And the way they look at it is completely different, obviously. And coming back to these DDRs, they really look at, you know, the involvement of DDR. What is the best split between food, beverage, room rental? How can we shift that around tax-wise, you name it? So they go into the details, really into the whole M&E part. But the majority is still saying like, okay, we've got the room part, that's 70% of our revenue stream. Growing there is sometimes not that easy because of fact, you know, there's market conditions and so on. While it's with M&E, if you have a good product and you have some potentials to change stuff, to make offers more interesting, to make your breaks more interesting, there's quite some revenue opportunities in there, which in my case, in my eyes, are not really looked upon as being that important. And we're only getting there now, that's showing data that it is really potentially there as a revenue contributor and growing revenue contributor.
You know, I think I think part of that, which is all true. I mean, it's very much dependent on, you know, the physical structure of the hotel. I mean, do they have enough meeting space in order to allow it to make a reasonable contribution? But I think there's probably a systemic bias toward transient rooms. Generally speaking, in a hotel, I mean, revenue management systems originally were all developed around pricing transient rooms. And I think where that put a lot of the kind of the meeting situation is that, you know, you show up with a meeting you want to book, and you're talking to the revenue team about it, you're talking to, you know, whoever you have to get it approved. And I think meetings have to justify their existence versus transient projections. You know, there are a lot of very sophisticated projections now saying, hey, we don't want to take these 50 rooms at this rate because our projections tell us we're going to get to sell them as transient rooms and get 20% more for them. So I think part of the issue, I think say it's probably part of is structural, is that transient is a given. Meeting bookings have to justify their existence. And again, Peter, to your point, that's more complicated because you're looking at not just the rooms, but you're looking at the catering, meeting space, other things that go on. So, you know, I think there's an inherent bias in it that's been there just from the beginning. I think that gets mitigated in, like you say, the hotels that have got enough meeting space that they can actually be a good contributor to the overall revenue.
Yeah, and I do believe as well where there is a shift, and I think that's an advantage for the whole M&E industry, is that they're looking more closely to total revenue, because there comes a cost with these transient bookings. There's commissions involved, the off-spin of a meeting and event, or a bigger group piece for staying 3 nights, 4 nights, not only having the M&E revenue, F&B revenue, but less cost when it comes to cleaning, because you have stayovers. I think I think 10 years ago, we didn't even think about it. I think the last 4 or 5 years, even after COVID, we've been looking at it differently, saying, okay, what is actually a cost of a room? And what do we get back if we get like a big bunch of big group that fills the hotel and has a good off-spin? That the bottom line, maybe the overall ADR for transient isn't that good, but the overall GOP or profit for that particular week is better because we have that. And that's also a mind shift. And that's also what like M&E people should be saying in these meetings sometimes. Say, listen, this is not good what you're saying. It's not only transient, it has to be taken to a broader perspective.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I guess because the hotel has been set around ADR, all the metrics, all the measurements, everything that people are measured on, and then you go to RevPAR, and then we're starting to creep into it is biased towards the room side of the business, isn't it? Any equation, any business case that is made, I guess, tends to use the room revenue as its starting point for any calculation going forward. I mean, do you see those cases where people are actually calculating, and I mean properly calculating to the F&B, to the profit, almost using the per square meter metric that we've spoken about before? Are we seeing cases out there where people are actually said, well, when we analyzed our meetings and event space, this is the profit it was generating as compared to the profit being generated on a transient booking? Do we see that out in the market? Is that being done?
I think it happens all the time. Again, my bias being that I operate exclusively in the group space, but I think it happens all the time. I don't think that's I think the idea of a sales guy going to the revenue team saying, "Hey, here's my piece of business," and the sales guy selling that piece of business to the revenue team, I think that happens frequently, because the revenue guys are the people that look at it and say, all right, well, okay, we've got the formulas. If you do this, we're going to sell this much catering, we're going to this much room rental, or all the pieces that come into it. So I think that happens fairly frequently. And back again, I think the degree to which that happens is largely a function of, again, how much available meeting space is there? Is there enough meeting space into the hotel that using it and allowing it to displace some transient will actually pay off and make it work? So in our side, that's standard perception.
Yeah, I agree that, for request, there's always this balance that they would go, how much does it bring? But if you look at other stuff, like in total revenue, how much it is really taken in consideration significantly and really thinking about it, not as much as I would hope for. I think that, if you look at balance sheets of hotels, the majority, start with rooms, obviously, because it's, the biggest revenue maker. But the overall perspective of saying that, these M&Es revenue streams are gaining more importance, it's really baby steps. And I think there's a couple of hotels and chains, especially in Europe, that are frontiers in that sense, and that they are expanding their meeting rooms because of their professionalism, because of their locations, and so on. But I think the traditional ones, although they say we look at total revenue, bottom line, I think the majority is still looking at the room revenue.
Peter, I thought what you said before was interesting. picked up on it and forgot about it because I was talking. But when you're talking about sort of the cost of a transient room versus a group or meeting room, where, you know, if you're selling transient rooms for, you know, one single nights, you have housekeeping costs every day. And, you know, if you're putting somebody in there for 3 or 4 nights, you know, one benefit, and I can use the word benefit loosely, about COVID was that it allowed the hotels to kind of change people's perception of what should be standard. And that's the point at which it started being, oh yeah, we're only going to clean your room, you know, every 2 nights, and we're not actually going to clean it. We're just going to rearrange the blankets for you. And, you know, that turned into a pretty significant cost savings for hotels that continues to this day, because lots of hotels don't do, you know, daily housekeeping. They might, again, do a little refresh, you know, unless you're in the, you know, luxury tier or something like that. And it's interesting. I'm just wondering, I haven't seen any, you know, we look at thousands of hotel proposals every month. I don't think I've ever seen a reference in a you know, an RFP response saying, oh yeah, I'm only doing housekeeping every other day. So I don't know if that's a thing or not, but it would seem to be something that, you know, it would be a good question for someone who is submitting an RFP to ask and find out what their intentions are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It would be an interesting exercise to do. Or to me, it would seem interesting. But then I'm interested in weird things. So it would seem interesting to me to sit down and say, right, if you could have a sliding doors, you know, 2 things running parallel, which you can't do, but let's say you had rooms that were booked for 4 nights, transient business, a new guest every single night of those 4 nights. And what that would cost to acquire that, what it costs to service that, what they actually spent as a guest in the hotel, and then you were to compare that to, say, a meeting. So you had 10 guests, all transient for 4 nights, compared to a meeting of 10 people who were staying, and what was the cost to acquire that? What was the cost to service that? What did they spend within the hotel? And then actually break that all down to look at, okay, what is the actual profitability against 10-room transient across 4 nights and 1 meeting, 10 people, 10 rooms across 4 nights. Just as it'd be quite, I don't know, maybe that is, but it would seem to me to be quite interesting as a way of saying, hold on a minute, that is more profitable, or maybe it isn't. But if it was, and significantly more profitable, that would probably make a strong argument to say, back to our original one, well, maybe we should be looking more at having this meetings and events and trying to drive that as a stronger revenue stream.
Yeah,
well, you know, if you look at that, though, you conceivably have some unknowables in that as well. If you're booking a meeting and the meeting is going to include a dinner for the group, then that's you know, that's a nice little piece of revenue for the catering side. But if it's going to be dinner on your own, which happens a lot, especially on a 2 or 3 night stay, you know, the one group dinner and maybe a wrap up, but you'll have one dinner at least for you just on your own. You know, is there any way to look statistically in a hotel and see, when we do that, how many people actually just go down and eat in the restaurant and drink in the bar in the hotel, and how many people go off site? Because you would need to know that to know whether or not, because I'm going to guess that you know, a restaurant meal is a higher piece of revenue than a catered meal in a meeting room. So yeah, you know, I think it's interesting. It's definitely complex, and just requires a lot of data. And I don't know that the data is there to support all of the arguments you might try to make.
I think I think indeed, like you said, that's super interesting to compare both of you, what you said. Data is out there. I think there's already some pioneers that have actually access to multiple data and revenue layers. So not only rooms, but indeed also M&E, F&B, other revenue, and then even come into the cost part, so that you could really look at what is total revenue. And then if you have those 4 or 5 components, and it's early stages, but they're already out there, then you could indeed, what you just mentioned, Trevor, cross-reference. You could see like, I had this week in September, very normal business week, 4 days with all transit. And I had this business week in October with similar sort of pricing out there for the transit, but my hotel was filled with 80% with groups. And then compare at the same time what was the profitability on those weeks. So that's not fiction, I would say. It's really out there, but it contains a lot of data and integrations to be done correctly, and also to everything to be posted correctly. But I think in the near future, we will be really getting at least there. And that also will be the first step into this awareness, what we just said, that this M&E or other revenues for that matter are really important to be looked at and taken into consideration.
I guess it also needs someone, the GM at the hotel or within the group, someone in the group to say, hey, let's actually do a calculation, even if it's broad brush to start with, and after the event, just to go back and actually say, hold on, there's a point here. Maybe we are missing a more profitable revenue stream. It doesn't have to, it's not going to necessarily swap the ratio of revenue within the hotel, but if you can drive with all the costs going up, if you can find an area that's driving greater revenue at a greater profitability, well, that seems like something you should be focusing on. Anyway,
I think the key to that is what you refer to it, as the postmortem, where you look at it after. And
that would be my
you can tell on your own dinner nights how many people ate in the restaurant, and kind of come up with some sort of a statistical model that you could use to push forward when making those decisions for whether or not you're going to actually take a piece of business or just decline it because it doesn't fit your mix and your goals.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Let me pose the final question out there for this session anyway. AI. Everyone's talking about AI. and just reading some articles, I was reading that corporate clients are using AI search to get mice information on hotels. So I'm not looking for anything concrete in terms of conclusions, because we're kind of at an early days, but just to kind of tee this up, and it might be a theme that we pick up as we run through this in future. But what are you seeing? How are you seeing AI come into the mice space? And in terms of what threats, opportunities you could see it presenting?
We use AI in it. At least they didn't call it A1 like the anyway. We use it for basic research on hotels. When we get a new client, they give us their list of, these are the 5 hotels that we want to have, shop for rates and meetings. It used to be a horrible process, and actually a sort of impossible task, to find out much about a hotel other than how many rooms they had. We used to open up what do they call it? The Hotel Travel Index, which has been around for about 1,000 years. They published it right after Gutenberg. I mean, it's been around forever, but it has all of the number of rooms in a hotel, and sometimes maximum contiguous meeting space. Most of it's just room information. But now, when we get new hotels, we just throw a list of the hotels into a chat GBT prompt and says, tell me how many rooms is this hotel? How many suites do they have? What's their meeting space capacity? And it all just flows right back to us. And that's very helpful for us doing what we're doing. So I have to extrapolate that, saying is, what I do all the time is I pretend to be a real customer. I'm going to assume that a real customer is also going to be doing that,
doing the same.
And to basically say, okay, here's my requirements. Which hotels in this market would meet my requirements, and then get a pretty good list that they could then work with. So I can see that as being a useful tool for someone who is, on the buying side of this equation.
Yeah, fully agree. I think it's also for event organizers. I mean, even privately, you can just put in, I want to go to Rome. What do you suggest? And you get like a full list of them. So if why not do that with as an indicator? And like you said in the beginning, there's a lot of details that go into meetings, so you would have to be at a certain time, be in contact with a proper location. But in the meantime, your filter is really, really strong, and presenting something as an event organizer to the people that you have to organize it for is quite a lot easier nowadays with the information at hand through AI.
Right. And, when you do it, unlike a Google search, the first, 2 pages aren't paid positions by hotels that are trying to get in front of you. It's actually just pure, clean data that you can literally just copy and paste into a spreadsheet and look at it and analyze it. So it's a very useful tool for us. And like I said, by extension, I'm assuming it's a very useful tool for somebody who's making actual inquiries.
Is there a potential risk then to hotels? Because that's obviously drawing information from websites. So by the nature of that, it's very dependent on the information that is on the website to answer that question. And back to some of our original information. If you're not focused on M&E and the information that you're presenting is very basic and minimal, will it potentially skew results to hotels that have spent more time investing in the content around their meetings and events on their web space? That's why I'm asking you the question. What do you think?
I think content is always important. I mean, however you do it, right? Out there for your company in any industry, content is important. But indeed, if there's content to be loaded up with, square meters, really detailed about your meeting rooms with layouts and stuff. If you put that out there, because I think in the initial phase maybe of a prompt, you could get a bit of a so many star hotels if you were looking for that with that meeting space and so on and so on. But then if they would go further and say, okay, but I need 10 breakout rooms, one big room in this whatever shape. If then you would have all that information out there, that hotel would be, top of list. And I think there could be a difference between the ones that are frontiers and say, I put everything out there so it can be visualized for any sort of business. And if you don't, then you could be losing out.
Well, it certainly would be a strategic thing for hotels to make sure that information is available. But, it's really surprising, because when we do that to get our information, we get information that I couldn't find to save my life. Searching for it, I can scour a hotel's website, till your fingers are numb, and it just isn't there. So I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe they're making it up. I don't know.
Maybe they've got different distribution platforms it's pulling off of that they put additional information in or something.
It's consolidating it from somewhere. And it's not, Peter, it's not necessarily coming off the first look at what's available. It's somewhere else. And I guess that's kind of the /creepy /scary opportunity with it, is because I think it's harder for someone to manipulate the result that you're getting off of an AI prompt than it was to manipulate the result you get off a search. And that actually kind of levels the playing field a little bit for someone who is not as big a player and who is not as diligent about getting their information out there to support that. It's out there. It's getting populated from somewhere. And I think that's probably good for everybody.
I mean, maybe we should ask them, where do you get the data from, and how do you actually?
ChatGPT, where did you get this information from?
Yeah, where did you get it?
I tried that, and the answer was, if I told you that, I'd have to kill you.
You're still alive.
I believe that.
Yeah. I think that indeed there's a lot in the unknown in that, and I think there will be a lot remaining in the unknown. for a long time. But at least, and I agree, there is something out there that can help us to get data and information fairly quickly. And I think the awareness of then saying, okay, wherever it comes from, like you said, it could be, when you prompt something, could be from anywhere. I think it always helps to have your basics right anyway, not only for this
Absolutely.
AI information, but also for your other clients and also for your hotels being representative for your structure and M&E being important.
Very
I
good.
think
Thank you, guys. There are 3 questions for our first Mice
There we
Baby
go.
episode. So hopefully people that have been listening and watching this have enjoyed it, got something from it. If they've got any other questions they want to pose to you guys, they can obviously let us know. But for now, thank you both for your opinions. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Take care.
happy to do it.
Well, thank you for watching, and I hope the conversation was of interest. Please do feel free to suggest any topics that you would like discussed in future videos. We're always open to suggestions. And if you missed any of our previous discussions, here is a link to our last video. Here is a link to our Expert Insights playlist, and here is the button so you can subscribe. Thank you once more, and I hope you'll join us again in the future. Goodbye for now.